recording. So what are we doing this week? What's the most challenging assignment? It's the course project, identify correct courts. One of the things says to use state court websites, use librarians, and of course ask the LLS. They'll help you navigate state court websites. But I will do it right here and now whenever you ask. Keeping track of your research efforts is important. Lexis, which is LexisNexis, which is another way of saying Lexis Advanced, it's not going to have a compiled list of level of courts for each state. It'd be nice if they did, but they just don't. So I push using Lexis, but not for this assignment. Not for this assignment. So when I say don't use Lexis, then you should sit up and take notice, because if you talk to students that have had me 3 times or whatever, they, oh, he always wants to use Lexis. Well, this time, no, don't. Use state court websites. In some states, it's even a bit easier if you use bar association websites. But in most states, state courts is the faster way. But anyway, try it. Now I'm going to turn off video. Let's pause the recording. Okay. Recording back on. Yeah, it was okay. It was okay to be on video before I turned it off, because that's sort of the introduction period, so that's fine. But I'm turning it off because I'm trying to create a smaller, like I say, smaller recording in the distant hope that maybe I can get it up tomorrow morning instead of giving it to you on Saturday. But like I say, part of me wants to go short today, but court system, if you understand the court system of your state, even a sketchy outline of the state court system, any understanding you have of your state court system will help you so much in future classes, because in future classes, you should keep asking yourself, how am I going to use this in practice? And if you can go to your state court system and understand, oh, I would use this in circuit court in my state. Oh, we don't have district court in my state, or district court in my state is different than in the instructor's state. The more you know about your own state court system, and the more you know about certain other things that we teach the better, the more capable you will be of understanding what you're researching. So knowing the branches will give you a research up, because you'll say statutes, that's legislature of my state, and you'll say rules, and your state may have some rules of court that were done by state legislature. My state, no, the rules of court are by the state Supreme Court. But you learn those things, and a lot of the research tasks you do in other courses will make more sense to you. And then, of course, there are administrative rules that we don't use much, but eventually, you know, when you take the research course, I want you to know about those too. Not right now. And so, yes, we're kind of outlining. I don't expect you to have super thorough knowledge of your state courts, but to have an outline of what your state courts are like. And again, that's me from years ago. I'm going to remind you to use references. If you get to which you will, get to state courts, you do want to be able to say, I found this in my state court website, I found this. So every answer should either show a reference to a state court website or to a bar association website. If you find something on the open web, I want you to find the same answer in an official website. And you're going to say, why should I do that? If I found an answer, that ought to be good enough. Because it's not good enough for law office work, that's why I'm telling you this. If you tell your boss, no, we don't have that anymore. We got rid of county court, you know, and the lawyer doesn't do a whole lot of courtroom work anymore, but they want to know something about courts. Let's say they're doing a specialized area of office law, and they really don't have to think about courts anymore. You might say, well, we don't have county court anymore. Or, yes, we do. We still have county court, but it's in limited jurisdiction. Or, like Minnesota got rid of all its limited jurisdiction courts, so everything in trial level is called district. If you're in Florida, district is an entirely different thing than it is in Minnesota. So if you just memorize what I tell you, you'll probably be wrong in your state. But if you learn to research in this class, you will be right all the time. You will be right 5 years from now when they change your system. Okay? Fair? Is this making sense to folks? I mean, because if it's not making sense, I've got to explain it a different way. It's not about me giving you answers and then you absorbing them and then finding a way to put them into the paper. It's about me encouraging you, coaching you to find stuff, report on it, and when you cannot find the final answer, to report on the 5 things you tried. You know, it's the if you tried 5 things, maybe you even had to call or email a librarian in your state, or you had to look in a state law library. You had to do something unusual. You went to ask the LLS in with Rasmussen. You made an appointment with Dennis Johnson. You did something. You telephoned me or you texted me and said, please call me tomorrow morning. Whatever it takes, do. Again, if you do not find the final answer and you're running out of time, report on what you did find and what you attempted on the items you did not find. Some of the questions in the written assignment, you may not know the final answer. It may be that you'll have to state, not sure if this is in circuit court or county court in my state, but here is where I looked to find county court and circuit court. Or my state doesn't appear to have county court or circuit court. It appears to have district court as the only trial court. Do you see where I'm coming from? I try to be fair. If your state has a more complicated system, you are working harder than those that have a simplified system. If you're from a smaller state, though, they may still have limited jurisdiction trial courts. What do you suppose a limited jurisdiction trial court would be? Just from sort of the way I said it, limited jurisdiction. I am sort of skipping to the assignment. I realize that. Yeah, that's one way of saying it. Bankruptcy court would be a good example, and that would be federal. But typically in textbooks, limited jurisdiction would be types of cases they can handle rather than geographic. Okay. And a limited jurisdiction trial court, for instance, let's say that, and I'm not telling you this is true in your state, but let's say they have a $15,000 limit on lawsuits for money. Anymore, and the lawsuit has to go to a different court, okay? And criminal limitation may be misdemeanor and felonies go elsewhere. Does that make sense? This is what's called subject matter jurisdiction. And I want you to personalize it too. By the way, I'm leaving this up so you can get this in your notes, okay? Federalism and research. If you learn federalism, your research will make more sense. Okay? It kind of still blows my mind that someplace in my state, I think it's in the Constitution, it says that we have one, or in the statutes, I can't quote exactly where it is, but it says that we have one trial court, which makes it sound like we have one judge in our whole state, and the trial court is continuously open, which common sense tells me that it closes at 4:30 every day, even when we don't have COVID-19. You know what I'm saying? So how can it be open, and how can there only be one when you've got 87 counties and all that? But in a certain rarefied sense, there's only one. But there's lots of judges, lots of courthouses. So, but I just don't want you to be thrown by stuff like that. Do not be thrown or intimidated. When you see something new, just type it out and go ahead and type out, I'm puzzled by this because it doesn't make sense yet. Okay? Go ahead and be puzzled. Do not go in circles. Just type out your difficulties. Show your methods, your attempts, and do the best you can. Like I say, some states are harder than others. Some states still have a whole list of types of judges. What I like to do is personalize it in terms of judges. Court systems is kind of abstract, and if you personalize it, it's easier to learn for all of us, not just you, as most of you are beginners. Some of you are not beginners because you have done legal type work. But especially for beginners, and to some extent for people who aren't beginners, but who have not been working with all types of courts, you know, you should try to personalize it in terms of judges. Imagine being elected or appointed as a judge. What are you allowed to do? You can't just make court rulings because anybody asks you on the street. Can I tell you a joke? And it does have a point. And this actually happened, but I won't tell you who asked me or whatever. But it was kind of strange. I was never a judge, but since I was a lawyer and this person admired me a lot, thought that I was wonderful. I don't know what I had ever done for this person. Maybe it was something in adult court. Maybe it was something in juvenile court. But comes up to me at the beach, the swimming beach, and says, and wanted me to overrule the city-appointed person. It was I think it was an older teenager who was managing the beach and had kicked the person out. And, well, I want you to overrule that person and tell him that I get to go back on the beach. And you can you see the humor of that? I mean, I guess it's not that funny online or whatever, but you can just imagine the look on my face and the look on his face when I told him, I'm sorry, I realize you respect me as a qualified attorney in this state, but I do not have the authority to order somebody to let you back on the beach. You know, I said, you know, the supervisor and so on. But that actually, you could actually use that if you wanted to explain to your child the levels of authority in your state. Do you realize that even if I had been a judge and had still, for some reason, had forgotten to take my black robe off, if I had been a judge, I still would not have authority to order the person back on the beach. Do you understand that? yeah, it doesn't matter. You do not have superpowers as a judge. You put yourself as a judge. Let's say you were appointed as the judge that has power over probate cases, misdemeanors, and the smaller lawsuits. Eventually, you could have power over the beach if this person's parents had sued to get them back on the beach, and they had filed the papers properly with the clerk of court, given proper notice to the other parties, et cetera, et cetera. And then a hearing was held in open court. You know, yeah. I don't even know if a police officer would have authority, even though they have the authority to immediately try to handle a breach of the peace. The police officer could not actually have had the authority to say, no, you get to go back on the beach, and I'm going to arrest the supervisor of the. I mean, the only thing the police officer could do is if there was abuse going on, that the supervisor of the beach, the lifeguard, had been abusive, then I suppose he could issue a ticket to that person and try to persuade them to stop being abusive and let the person back. But no, even the police officer probably could not overrule that teenager. It would take the city council or eventually, several months later, a judge could say that was incorrect. You know, yeah, it's kind of equated to police officers' jurisdiction of powers, but a judge cannot. A judge can't pursue a case into another jurisdiction. They're stuck with letting another judge handle it. You know, where there's no such thing as a judge doing hot pursuit. But it's kind of hard to visualize jurisdiction, but think of a specific judge. The fact that the judge has an official black robe, presides in court, doesn't give them authority over every type of case. In my state, district judges, basically almost any state court case that's brought into one of our state courts in any of our districts, our judges have power over. But do our state court judges do not have power over a federal case or over a case that they don't have geographic jurisdiction, then they can't hear it. If they don't have personal jurisdiction, they don't hear it. In other words, if the person has not been properly served, you know, there are a lot of ifs, ands, and buts have to do with it. Because, for instance, a real estate case, some of the real estate cases I handled, I had to sue people out of state about just to make sure that they that the title was settled. Like, but since the property was in my state, I could sue and give them proper notice, have them served out of state, and then the judgment would be binding on them. But other cases, I would have had to sue them in their home state, and I would have had to get a lawyer in their home state to actually do that for me. Okay. Yeah, it is strange that way. So you're trying to find the trial courts, not the appeals courts. How many are from? Well, I know some of you are from Florida. I think that are here live, right? Florida has a strange situation in that one of the trial courts also has some appeals jurisdiction, and so that makes it a little more complicated. So you actually have kind of 2 levels of trial courts and 3 levels of appeal. But a lot of people don't really think that the first level of appeal from county court really is an appeal. It's more of a retrial.
I'm listening to my teacher. Yeah.
Michael, did you ask a question?
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry.
That's okay. You can mute yourself if you want. Just click the little microphone symbol, and then you turn it back on whenever you want.
Sorry.
Okay. or I can do that for you if you can get
Right.
to it. Okay, you got it. Anyway, no, that's fine. Any participation is good. You know, go ahead and unmute yourself and talk whenever you want, anybody. But some states do not have 2 levels of appeal. My state didn't until after I was an attorney for a few years. You know, and of course there's a dispute, kind of an ongoing dispute about how important our Court of Appeals is that is not the Supreme Court. But I would say it's very important. And when the Supreme Court has not ruled on something, the Intermediate Court of Appeals in my state, people go by it. If trial judges go by it, we better know about it. So finding, my theory of this is that I should help you find some stuff. If you've already found it yourself, I guess you don't have to ask, but how would you like me to try to find something? And I can try. I'm not going to promise I'm going to find it in 60 seconds, but I'll try. So if you want to type find and then a state name in the chat, I'll try to find them. Like find Min for Minnesota, find Florida for, you know, and I'll try to find your court system. Okay, Tennessee. Okay. Florida, okay. Okay, Chicago doesn't have its own, it'd be Illinois. Okay. Although Chicago may have some wrinkles of local rules, but they would be part of the Illinois court system, I think. And California, okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to attempt that, and I'm going to attempt to share it. And I'm going to try to do it fast enough so it doesn't create too much of a file size here. Let's see. Well, I'm going to go back to the course, and then I'm going to try to find it from there. Open up a new browser. So let's try to find Tennessee. I'm just going to try finding courts. Tennessee Courts Directory. Okay, this finds the appeals, and because this is on the top, my guess is that, like most states, your Supreme is at the top. Not true for New York, but most states, Supreme Court is at the top. And then I would probably start from the bottom and municipal courts. And this is fine print. I would read the fine print and see what municipal courts are allowed to do. And they look like they are a limited jurisdiction court. Violation of municipal ordinances. Municipal means a city, but in some states it could involve things that are not technically called cities, like boroughs, townships, towns. Counties are municipalities, or parishes, yeah. Okay, so this is limited jurisdiction. And I would look at juvenile and family, and that does not apply to our present project, but you could skim through it on your way. Okay, this could vary from county to county. Okay, oh, this is pretty hard. If you get stuck on Tennessee, you know, I think you should have me help. But if you survey through your courts and you say, well, I was not able to determine it because it required too much research, go ahead and tell me that. But tell me that you look through these. This looks pretty hard. Juvenile, like I say, again, juvenile and family, but you've got circuit, criminal, chancery, and business. Okay. Chancery sounds like it probably handles like probates, family, but I don't know for sure. I have not really spent any time to speak of in Tennessee courts. And I would say that circuit and criminal would probably be most likely what we're looking at, but you want to survey through to know more about it. Okay, here is more. And now I probably overdone Tennessee, but it's a complicated state. Let's try Florida. Florida courts. I'm going to flcourts.org, and this is the full list. And some students in the past have skipped one of these. They found district courts of appeal, but they didn't find the Supreme Court. They found circuit, but they didn't find county. My memory is that county is a limited jurisdiction trial court. And they have, the only thing they do is trial level things. Trial level doesn't mean that they have to have a trial each time. It means that they have jurisdiction over something that could go to a trial. So if somebody just wants to pay their ticket, or that there's a lawsuit over $30,000 or less, you can determine whether or not the county court could handle it or not. These things change. So if it used to be $15,000, it might have been changed to $30,000 on civil cases. Okay. And this says trial courts, but if you look into some depth, you're going to say, aren't they kind of doing an appeal? But again, if you expect to understand 100% of this the first time you study it in less than a week, unless you have on the ground experience, I'm not sure you're going to fully get it. This says the word district, which we typically associate with the trial court, but in Florida it is not a trial court at all. They don't do trials here. Of course, I could say about absolute that my Supreme Court in my state never does trials, and then all of a sudden you say, yeah, but certain election disputes and certain trials of lawyers, don't they do that? Well, okay. So again, what you find out your first time through, there may be an exception. Okay? So as soon as you think you know everything, you probably don't. Most people don't think of Supreme Courts as having any mandatory jurisdiction that they have to do. Most highest courts don't have to take a case, but here in Florida, they have to take certain cases. Do you have to know that this week? No, but survey through these things and try to answer the questions, and then give the site and the link. You see the link up here? This is what I mean by a link, is to capture this, where it says FL Courts, very top.org, Florida Courts, Supreme Court of Florida. That's capturing a link. So you would cite the Florida Courts website, and then colon, and then the link. Okay, let's try. I'm going a little slower than I wanted to, but if I go too fast, people don't realize that I'm researching. They think that I already had this up, and I didn't. I really didn't figure all this out in here. What I want to go to is the .gov's, the official. In some states, though, you're going to say, well, I tried that, Mr. Olson, but I went to the Bar Association and that was easier. And you could, like Illinois Bar Association could answer this. Circuit courts, I'm not seeing other trial courts, but you can do some other checking. but I'm seeing Supreme, Appellate, and Circuit within Illinois. So it's kind of simplified. Oklahoma. A lot of times in the past, what I'm doing, by the way, are you seeing what I'm showing? Okay, yeah, I'm glad, because you got to tell me if you can't. And you're seeing that I'm going to the official ones, not to a blog, okay? Okay, this is just district courts. I guess any of these will lead to, I guess these will lead to the other courts, I suppose. Okay, this is just municipal court, so this is not the general court. I'm going to try Oklahoma Supreme Court. Okay, I'm going to the website of Oklahoma Supreme Court. And then I'm going to go to courts. And it's given me more than I really want in a way, but it gives me the levels of appeals. And, oh, these are judicial biographies? Oh, okay, I don't really want all those. This one, it might be good to go to the Bar Association. Notice that they have fast case built into their Bar Association like Minnesota does. So if you work for somebody in Oklahoma that has a Bar Association membership, they don't even know necessarily that they can go to fast case. And if they're trying to save money by not having something else, you know, let the lawyer know, hey, we got fast case right there, so we can more easily find the cases relating to statutes. You can go to statutes, scroll down, see cases. Okay, I'm not seeing an easy link, but it probably has the court system in here. Okay, court facts. There we go. Okay, and then it'll come up on a PDF. I don't know if the PDF showed up though. Were you able to see that? You don't have to see it, but you have to know it's there. Okay, I'm trying to share two applications, so I probably didn't get to it. Okay, to me that's the big deal. Now I got to look back through the chat. Some of most of the .orgs that would be let's see, .gov ones, and some .orgs might be good too. Like Bar Association might be .org, but most of the official are .gov. Could you pick? Is that okay, Jessica? You know, and I take calls till 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time, but if you text me and let me know when I can call you. That's also good. That's probably the easiest way to contact me. So if I've stepped out, I'm in the yard, or whatever, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay? OSCN. So I go 9 to 9. 9 to 9. It usually helps to text first, and let me know time I can call. And sometimes I can answer the text. That's the reason I have Google Voice. This Google Voice number, I can actually use a keyboard to text you. That's the number that I have in the course. Yeah, fast case was with the Bar Association. Lots of bar associations have fast case. So if the lawyer you work for, is a member of a bar association, they probably have fast case or something similar to fast case that's already provided that the lawyer does not have to pay extra for. But lawyers they're not using it as often as they should, because they don't realize the power of these. They don't realize that it will get them to, if they find a case, it'll get them more easily to related cases than just doing web searches. And if they go to a statute and they say, well, just look through the statute book, it will get you to the cases related to that statute very fast. And again, cases are judicial cases that go in front of a judge, and then if the losing party says that trial judge made an error, they go up to a Court of Appeals judge or a Supreme Court judge, judge or justices, I should say, plural. And the higher court, through the votes of those justices or judges, decide whether it was an error or not an error. And as those are the reported cases that we care about. And I like to simplify it this way. Lawyers don't care about the same cases that people care about. And I'll ask this as a question: do lawyers someone else's trial case? Not their client. What do you think? As lawyers, I mean, as human beings, I mean, we might be interested in something we read in the newspaper, but as lawyers, do we give a rip? We don't give a rip. Nope. I don't care how well, I never did care how well the lawyer in 30 miles away or 25 miles away or 60 miles away, even if they could brag about it at a bar association meeting, I didn't care how they did at trial. What I cared about was, did it go to appeal and set a precedent? If not, I don't care. Brag all you want, I don't care. If it set a precedent, I care deeply, because my judge will have to follow it. Okay. See, I can brag about the cases I won, but they're meaningless to other lawyers. the only cases that lawyers called to me about were where my case set a precedent in the higher court. In my case, it was a court of appeals. The court of appeals case, and of course, I didn't really win. My client won. Do you see the thing? But nobody cared that my client won at the trial level. The only time other lawyers cared or gave a rip about the case is it went to the Court of Appeals. We won there. It set a precedent, and then the other side, which was the city I live in, we were suing. The city I live in, Long Prairie, Minnesota, tried to get it into my state's highest court, the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court turned it down. So then from then on, lawyers across the state use it as a precedent. Would a lawyer in Michigan or Wisconsin care about my Minnesota case based on Minnesota law? What do you think? Well, tiny bit, but not much. Basically, just academically, my case was my one. I'm only cited in another state, not me personally, but my case. And this one I have permission to talk about because both the client who is deceased and his estate agreed that I could talk about it. Okay. My case was discussed in a Missouri appeal, but just as what they call, I would call it as sort of an academic interest or persuasive authority, but they didn't have to follow it. Not required mandatory authority, okay? So it's really just an analogy, or it's sort of like, it's more like academics. In other words, the people in Missouri had no reason they had to follow the case. The trial judges in my state have to follow the case precedent because I didn't decide the case. I just defended the trial court decision in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals panel of judges decided it in favor of my client. Then it became a binding precedent in my state, but it's not a binding. The other 49 states don't have to follow it because there's geographic jurisdiction, okay? And this is a complicated country. Other countries are not similar, most other countries. There's USA, to some extent, I think Switzerland is somewhat similar. There's some home rule now in parts of the United Kingdom. A lawyer from France would laugh if they said, so a case in Minnesota has no bearing anywhere else. It's a law here, but it's not a law across the border into North Dakota. You have your own complete set of laws in Minnesota, and people in North Dakota don't have to follow them. Yes. Gambling is fully legal, and selling alcohol and whatever and all these places is legal in Nevada. But if you go across into Utah, lots of the things that the state actually protects and helps with in Nevada are illegal in Utah. And a lawyer from another state would laugh and say, what? You're not a country at all. You're a federation. What kind of a country are you? And you have to say, we are a country with divided powers. We are a country with layers. We are we have a representative Republican form of government that is not similar in many ways is different from other countries. We don't have a national law. We have federal laws that are binding across the country, and we have state laws that are not. And it's not stupid to be confused a little bit by this, okay? You have to untangle it one step at a time, and don't be impatient with yourself. Be patient, okay? Be patient. Plan your work, work your plan. Plan to show your work. I don't want you to leave this course without being super distinctive between criminal and civil. Can I give you a very practical example from everyday law? It's not that it's a completely different set of facts. It's the process. You may use the same judge, same courtroom as in civil, but plaintiff is the people of the state. Public prosecutors can sign for criminal charges. Private attorneys cannot. How many times didn't somebody come in and it was maybe I was doing something for the family law or whatever, and they said, well, they tried to run me over. I want you to have them arrested, and I want you to charge them with a crime. And I said, you know, I can't. I cannot charge them with a crime. I'm a private attorney. Did you call the police? No, I'm talking to you. They tried to run me off the road. Her boyfriend tried to run me off the road. And I said, did you call the police? No. You understand the police have to bring a complaint to the, in my state, it's county attorney, but the public prosecutor, and that person can charge out a complaint form. I can't do it. We could sue the person if we had enough proof to where we could win, but there's no way I can bring a criminal charge. Okay. The purpose is to punish the guilty, let the innocent go free, safeguard the rights of the accused. Civil, the best way to memorize civil is you want dollars or return of private property. I want my stuff. I want them. I want my stuff back, or I want money. I want money for my injuries. Okay, that's the best way. And of course, civil includes other things too, but that's the basics, okay? Regular civil court, plaintiff wants money. Plaintiff is a private property, not the people of the state. One of the simplest examples where it involves the same basic facts, but there's two completely different proceedings is, okay, I represent somebody for driving under the influence. And based on the reasonable doubt standard, the jury was not sure, beyond a reasonable doubt, they were not certain that my client had driven the car. He was, at the time of the arrest, is clearly under the influence and all of that. They could prove that. They couldn't prove for sure that he was the driver. He was the most likely driver, but he was not for sure the driver. When it came time to sue the state to get his driver's license back, we lost. Because most likely, more likely than not, he was the driver, more likely than that anybody else was the driver. So we lost in civil court, and he said, where's my license? I said, you can't get your license. You have to retake your written and road, you have to pay a reinstatement fee, et cetera, et cetera. You have to do all that. Well, where's my license? We won. I thought we won. I said, no, don't you remember that court case we had before the criminal trial that you lost? Oh, yeah, but I thought that was just bogus when I won the other trial. I said, no. We lost on the civil case for getting your license back because in the civil license proceeding, it starts out very even. It's very even. They had a bit more evidence than we did. In the criminal trial, I could tell the jury that in order to uphold our system of government set up by our founders, they needed to fulfill the reasonable doubt standard in order to find you guilty. and they couldn't because there was some doubts, and those doubts were reasonable. Is it following into, is this sort of falling into kind of a comprehension for you? Is this making sense, in other words? I'm going to pause the recording. So the burden of proof is different. It's different, and you cannot equate a criminal trial with a civil trial. It's just not the same, even if the same sort of facts are there. Yeah. You say, my neighbor stole my stuff, and I want him in jail. You call the cops. The cop says, I can't do anything. The neighbor says, he borrowed your rake, and he returned it, and I don't see any rake. You let me look through his garage. And you say, well, he must have loaned it to his son-in-law, so they stole it. Well, fine, but yeah, the police probably won't do anything for it in criminal court. You know, you admit that you sometimes loan stuff to them and they just don't give it back for a while and so on. But then you bring a civil case and you say, well, how come my lawyer can really get, you know, I got everything back from him and I got money damages, or my, you know, in this case, it would probably go to people's court called conciliation court in my state. Okay, you get your rake back, plus you get some money for the fact that he wrecked it. And the other thing, the power mower that you loaned him, you get that back, and you get something. You know, how come I won there and I couldn't get the police or the prosecutor to do anything? Same thing. You know, you got to do discovery methods in civil court. You got damages. You know. Right. Yeah. And Lexus Advance, we're not using that, but I am going to do a club activity, and I'm advertising. This will be fun. We're going to do the same thing. Again, I'm going to keep this down. It's probably going to be closer to 30 minutes than 45, but it'll be fun. We're going to do a scenario, and we're going to talk about something kind of similar to the hey, they kicked me off the beach thing. But this time the officer, the deputy sheriff, is going to arrive and try to get some group of young folks to realize that they cannot congregate in the park against our current rules of the against the COVID-19 virus. How's that? I will pause or stop the recording. I think it will help people comprehend it because it's a role play. If something is fun, you remember it. That's the point. But there's a very good reason not to require it. It's co-curricular. You know, and I have a lot of students who have to check in on elderly parents and bring kids to the doctor and so on. So don't skip something like that to do a co-curricular. But if you have a half hour, stop in and enjoy it.